So welcome back. We are here for episode 2 of A Dose of Sinsanity. I think I speak for everyone. We had a really good time last time and covered some really fun topics. And this week we're going to be talking about just being a captain. Um, Different aspects, what comms look like, what our philosophies are as captains, kind of just the inner workings of being a captain within AD2L or really any other team. Um, I'm GR3. I'm joined by Welshie and Jamokin. We got a special guest this week with BryGuy. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Hello, everybody. I'm BryGuy, the Grin Dota 2 admin. Happy to be here. Hopefully, I can shed some light on some captaining ideologies.
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited to talk about this, especially with myself and Welshie being a part of, honestly, the same team for so long. Jamokin, you ran PSGS and captained that for how many seasons?
About since season 28.
And you've been going pretty strong, running a couple different rosters, like we talked about last week. You've done some uh, the dope or open qualifiers and all that, and um, kind of transferred different players into the mesh of that. Um, how is that different though? Like between the like open qualifiers and running your normal roster.
I think it's a lot easier to get a stack for the open quals because I mean realistically we know we're not gonna qualify. Like it's just kind of a fun learning experience. And it's only a day or two. So there's no real time for team dynamics to kind of fall apart. Whereas in over the course of the league, you know, there's a lot more juggling I feel a captain has to do to try and keep everything together.
A lot more relaxed kind of a situation, you'd say.
For sure. Yeah.
And then Welshie, you're taking over captainship as Pot of Greed. Your first season as being a captain. How do you feel
Indeed.
about that one?
I feel excited, honestly. I had a lot of opportunity to kind of see what I thought a captain should do. I think you did a great job kind of leading by example with a lot of
Oh,
things. And
trust me, I know.
yeah, the good thing is that I get to not make I mean in full honesty, I got to watch good captaining, and good scouting and just kind of what I thought a good team was to be run like. And I got to, kind of watch from behind the scenes. I have ideas of how I want to run the team and ideas on my kind of ideologies as a captain, and I think it's going to be a really good season. I particularly enjoyed that we're going straight into it at the top division of AD2L as well. We're going right into it from the start.
Yeah, we'll get into kind of the new captainship and talk about that here in a bit. Um, but let's kind of jump in. So, Braga, especially, you've played on multiple different teams, whether being captain or not. A lot of within the Grin organization, if I remember right, in the LLS charity event, you played on how many teams? Four?
Most. I think all but one or two. I played on all of them.
So I'm really excited, and like I was telling you before we kind of hopped on here, I think it's going to be really cool to kind of get your insights on this because you've been a part of so many different stacks and teams, captaining and also taking like a backseat just player like role. So I'm really kind of excited to hear what you have to say. But let's talk about just communication and like your in-game comms and all that stuff. Um, what's it like in your previous teams? Like what kind of felt great during your comms? What felt really bad? Troubles you found? Um,
So, yeah, so the biggest communication failure I have found when running teams, or in this case, just being on a team, being a player and someone else is captaining, is when they take the idea that like whatever I say goes. If you don't follow me, you're wrong, and then we lose. Like that is like the worst idea when you're a captain to do it. Like I understand where the angle you're coming from. It doesn't work. So like when you're captaining, you have to know each person on your team. You have to respect that they know their role better than you, and then you have to like let them say what they need to say or like do a call if they need to make a call based on how strong they feel. So whenever I have like a new captain, especially in the grain organization that likes to come at that angle, I always try to talk to him like, nah, I've never seen that work out too good. Like if you want to do it, go ahead, but I've never seen it work out good. And I've definitely been on teams like that where I'm just like, all right, I'll shut up and listen, and then it just doesn't work.
There's a lot of
Uh,
trust for sure
yeah,
in it.
absolutely.
100%.
And then the best kind of comms we've had on a team was also one where I wasn't captaining. I don't know if you guys know. I doubt it. His name's Sorry. He's usually
Yeah,
plays on our
yeah.
highest grin team. He's amazing support player. So like when we played in MD2L 2 seasons ago and we went to the LAN in Illinois and all that, Sorry, I air quote captained the team, but Sorry drafted. He shot called pretty much everything. He did like the whole team dynamic. I just did all like the logistics stuff. Like, hey, are you guys have a hotel or what? But that team worked super well because Sorry's idea was that in game everyone had a voice in the draft, and then he would kind of facilitate. He ultimately had the final say, but he would absolutely take everyone's advice into consideration. And then in the game, our biggest thing was me and Sari as the support duo would run the early game, and then as soon as Rhino, who was our offlaner at the time, would get like his 1 or 2 item timing where he was feeling like the strongest hero on the map, he would start taking over calls. He'd be like, hey, let's go do this real quick. I got my timing. We do that, and then it would just keep progressing up the ladder until finally our carry's like, yo, I'm ready to go. Let's go end the game. So every time we would play, we would someone else would be running the team pretty much in the game, and then eventually when Pixie, who was our carry player, would say, hey, I'm at my timing, let's go, we always won the game in the next 5-10 minutes. This is just how the team dynamic was. It worked extremely well. And so I try to like model my team dynamics now based on what I've gathered that last year.
Yeah, that's something kind of similar what we adopted in Pot of Greed over the last seasons, where we had a designated shot caller, where myself would be essentially play that role. Um, but one thing we talked about in, I want to say 32, when we had Naya Valara as our support player, was the difference between macro and micro calls. Um, we can't be the ones to call every single shot of what every single person's doing. You have to have, like you were talking about, that trust aspect where you know they're going to make the decisions the way they should be. You trust them to play their position. That's the reason they're on the team. Um, and we would essentially allow like the supports to kind of make a little bit of calls, but once Welshie, who was our offlaner, got online, we kind of just let him roll. Hey, I want to fight. Hey, I want to do this, and then we would play behind him. Is that pretty accurate, Welshie?
I'd agree. Absolutely. The biggest thing being is that in the laning stage, it felt like it was. I mean, Naya, I would say, did that in the one season he did play with us. But I would say more than anything, it was like supports are trying to problem solve the laning phase as hard as they can for the most part. Like, is the safe lane struggling a lot? Okay, let's put some resources down there, and that's what you guys were doing a lot of the shot calling on. Was like, hey, like we need to problem solve bottom, we need to problem solve top, we need to problem solve mid lane, and figure out how to fix those. And then after that, when group play started, mostly it was you reminding and like following, like, hey, I say I'm strong, which means that you know what I want. I want Naya up here, or I want the 5 up here now because I want to put resources in the strong lane. I don't want to put resources in the weak lanes. So bring the support up here. Tell Austin to go to the jungle or wherever he has to go, and let's go take towers.
How about the aspect in PSGS? I know that you guys were very, I like to describe as mechanical in the way that you guys played your game. You had a very strict game plan. You followed it to the T. Everyone was kind of on the same page. Like, did your communications in game kind of work similar to ours, or did you guys kind of differ a little bit?
So, um, like I was the captain of PSGS, and so but what my job was is before the game and like outside of actively playing Dota, I would like lay out the strategy. I was a strategist. I was the one that would be like, this is what we're gonna do, this is how it works, these are what these heroes do, this is their job in the game. But as a carry player, I'm not able to like micromanage and watch what people are doing or know how strong you feel. And so we really designated a shot caller, which was usually our position 4, sometimes our 3. And they would start making the calls in the game. And as far as in-game comms went, it was a real big push to talk mentality. I really wanted calls to be short and clear. I didn't want people rambling. I didn't want them thinking out loud. It just clutters comms, and it's not helpful for your team. As well as it helps you keep your emotions in check. Um, because one of the worst things that can happen is when toxicity starts coming up in the comms, the game could just start falling apart. So like usually we'd have our shot caller be the loudest person in the call, and everybody else would be turned down a bit because they're the ones making the real important calls. They should always be audible.
Right.
And so that's kind of
It's important too that everyone hears the shot caller as the loudest voice. You don't want any confusion. I'm a big believer in you follow the one call, even if it's the wrong call, as long as everyone's on the same page and is doing the same thing, there's still a possibility that the wrong move can turn into a good move. But even if you make the shot caller makes the right call, if people start questioning it or they start to hesitate a little bit, then that's when things start getting a little hesitant and kind of starts going a little south in your fight. And yeah, sure, sometimes they still could go well, but it feels like more often than not, if there's different decisions being made and different calls being made, and you're not listening and focused on the shot caller, then most of your fights tend to go south.
Yeah. Can I say a pet peeve of mine? Like when it comes to like that kind
Oh,
of thing.
please do, please do.
One of my biggest pet peeves, I feel like, and I agree with everything you're saying there. Let me say that first is the majority rules as far as I'm concerned. If most of the team thinks that the call is good, then go with it. And exactly like you said, just because it's not the best move doesn't mean that it's not a good move, right?
Yeah, the biggest part of that though is you're hesitating to do your little democracy, which I'm absolutely understanding where you're coming from, and I'm all in for that. But
My
uh,
thing is like, yeah, sorry, God.
no, I'm just saying if like you wait too long to like decide if it's good or not based on like the 3-2 majority, then that opportunity's already passed.
Which I agree with you. You need to have somebody at some point just say, okay, like, are we smoking right now? If 3 people say yes, and if it's and they say yes and it's good to go, as far as I'm concerned, the play has been called. Like, and it's to that person who asked, like, are we smoking? Okay, we're smoking. Like it is, you're right. It's very quick decision making. The point that I wanted to make though is that one of my biggest pet peeves is the shoulda, coulda, wouldas in the middle of a game. Um,
Oh, I hate that.
yeah,
Word,
people
preach
saying
it.
something along the lines of like, a play, you make a play, it's not the best play or things go wrong, and then you get I didn't want to do that. And it's like, okay, that's cool, man. It still happened though, and
Yeah.
we can have the shoulda coulda. My thing is always shoulda coulda wouldas are for after game. Everything that's happening right now, we have to accept that it happened and move on to the next decision. I don't care what's happened. I care what's happening and what's going to
Right.
happen.
And my
Absolutely.
biggest thing when I was, oh, I'm sorry, but my biggest thing when I actually captain teams, which isn't very often, believe it or not, I usually just like get the team ready. I'm like, hey, you're gonna do the shot calls. I'm just gonna win your lane for you. That's how I do it. But and basically how I do it. Oh, sorry, hold up, take over for me.
I'll take over for you. Not a problem. So yeah, I definitely get what you're saying, Welshi. There's certain times where you want to reflect, and it's okay at times in the middle of the game. Like saying stuff is, yeah, this kind of went south here. I think that or us not initiating on, say, Bane, um, if the Bane's alting our carry every single time, we're not getting to them saying, hey, we should have got onto the vein. We need to make sure in the future that we get onto them. But there's other things where, like, say we go into the game and we're not all like crazy about the draft for XYZ reason. and then dwelling. Like you can't do that. There's a time and a place for it. It's not in the middle of the game.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's really important to like kind of express what you want to do next time and not what you should have done. And
Which is a
like I
after you.
think that's really like if the situation's going to come up again, then it should probably be addressed, right? But if it's not going to come up again in the game, then it can come up after the game because it's really not important enough.
Which is a page I take from your book, Jamokin, which is have your mentality and the things that you're saying and everything that you're contributing to this game, everything you're contributing during a game be 100% towards winning the game. So if it's coming out of your mouth, it better be towards the idea of winning this game, which is to make a comment of like exactly like that, right? If it's you're reflecting on the fight to see what went wrong and what we need to fix, absolutely. Like say, I don't think we went on the Bane that fight, and I think that's why we lost. If just next fight, let's go on the Bane. But exactly to that point, that's a comment that is focused on winning the game. Comments like, I said I didn't want to do this move. Like, I think that was a terrible move. That is not a mentality of winning the game. That is we can talk about missed decisions after. And guess what? It's not after the game right now. We're still in it and we still have a chance of winning. So let's focus on that.
right. I want to bring up kind of my biggest pet peeve.
Go ahead.
So being being a drafter, the biggest
yeah.
thing that I have an issue with is when there's a lot of outside talk during the draft, when the team's not focused as a whole on what's going on, the picks and things along those lines. To me, I'm like, I was a position 4 player. I know position 4, I know a little bit of position 3, I know some position 5, but I'm not the one that's playing like into these different matchups. I have ideas, of course, and I prepare ideas in certain situations, but it's never going to beat the actual experience. I remember in season 29, we used to run every time someone would pick Viper, we would run Ember Spirit. Traditionally, it's not a great lane for the Ember, but we always won it because our mid laner was very comfortable in that matchup, knew how to play it to a T. And it's not something, if I don't know anyone on the team, that I'm ever going to draft. So not having that focus, that's something that you potentially miss. So when we're talking about, say, like outside stuff, what did you do last Friday or what, some weird story back in college or something like that, like the biggest annoyance to me is trying to focus on the draft and having that outside noise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely unacceptable from like my perspective. That just can't happen. What were you gonna say, Wilson?
I think it's just again, it's a show to how right your mentality is. And I think that just to expand on it, the game starts the moment that drafting has begun.
The
I
game
mean,
starts when you get in the lobby. Like,
yep,
Yeah, it does.
that's what I was about to correct myself to. Yeah, you're right. The
That's
moment that you
mentality
step in the
check in the
lobby, the game
lobby.
is on.
Well, let's kind of move forward a little bit. Like we're just talking about the start of the game. Let's kind of talk in between a little bit, the reset. I know some teams have different strategies and ways to reset from a win or a loss. Um, Things where you just got blown out of the water and now you got to turn around 5-10 minutes later and play a second game of a series. Or even if you're down in, say, grand finals 0-2 and you have to turn around, reset, and kind of move forward. What kind of strategies have you used in the past, Brian?
So basically, especially in this example, if you're in the grand finals, you got there for a reason. So your play style is what got you there. So my big thing is, let's say we're in grand finals, we just went down 0-1, we just got blown out. During the in between lobbies, it's, hey guys, everything we did to get here is everything we need to do to win this game. Not not anything they're doing. Like we need to play our game, and that's how we'll beat these guys. That's always my mentality. Like if I'm there for a reason.
The amount of times I've heard Greco say we need to play our game and that's all we need to do, I can't even tell you. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, when you start focusing on what there's a time and a place to focus on the other team, and normally that's during your scouting and when you're prepping and all that stuff. But once you're actually into the game, you have a style that works for you. And when you try to branch into something else, your team, it creates a lot of confusion your team's not 100% comfortable. And a lot of the times, like to me, like while she was saying, I say, let's just play our game. Is we go in, we know what we're doing, we know what we're good at. Let's kind of go back to our roots, what makes us comfortable, and then let's play that. In the grand finals this last season against Pot of Lust, game two, our reset was basically, hey, look, we're just here. Like, this is a pub. Let's just play this. Whatever heroes you guys want to play, screw strategy, throw it out the window. Screw scouting, throw it out the window. You tell me the hero that you just want to play, and then we're going to play it, and we're going to make it work because we're going to be comfortable, and we're going to know our heroes inside and out. We're playing our best heroes most likely, and then run with it. And I believe we stomped that game. How about you, JMO? What kind of strategies do you use for reset?
Um, I really had to read. You really had to read the room at any given loss. Come playoff times, because like in season 33 when we had that long lower bracket run, we lost like every single game one, and then we'd win the next two, and so at a certain point it almost became a meme. Oh, okay, we got our loss out of the way. Now we just got to go win. Um, but then other times, um, sometimes we talked instantly about how we want to adjust. Like even while the game was still going, like if we knew we were going to lose, we're already talking about how we're going to adjust things. Or sometimes it was just give them some time, like give them 5 minutes of silence. Everyone just like works through their thoughts, and then we crack back at it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, of just that moment of silence. What we've done is normally after every single game, I say everyone go to the bathroom, get yourself a drink, uh, just kind of get up and move. Because I think just removing your eyes from the screen a little bit and not just dwelling on that post game screen where you're looking like, oh, we lost this lane, or oh, this is where it went down. Just getting up and just seeing something different, I think plays a big part in just refocusing for the next game.
Right. And if your team's going to be playing like Captain Hindsight, you might as well not get into the next lobby because you're just going to feel like crap and just lose again.
Right.
Captain Hindsight never works out.
Oh, never. And I've also heard other teams in the past, they'll utilize, how should I say, like just talking and joking. And we had Nick last season, where towards the end of the season when things were rough, we started out 6-0, and then I think we went 1-5 in our back half of the group stage. And we just started utilizing Nick, who's just a goofy dude, and let him talk and give a speech and things along those lines. Did you guys ever have somebody like that where it's just like kind of just a breath of fresh air to restart and kind of lift the mood in the room?
Yeah. So back to that MD2L team, I'm going to reference that a lot because that was probably the best team dynamic I've ever had. But Sorry was that guy. He was he's a he's just an overall a great captain, a great guy. But yeah, whenever we would be like down, which we had like, let me give you some names that were on the team. We had Hexy on our team. We had Rhino on our team. You guys don't really know Pixie a whole lot, but like they're all like kind of Captain Hindsighty and like they'll dwell on things. They're very emotion based players. And so
Massive
like if we
personality.
get smoked, which happened, so our big thing in MD2L in the group stage, it was we would 1-1 every single team. It didn't matter how good they were or how bad they were. Like the team that won the whole tournament got first place out of 40 teams, lost like 3 games all season. They went 2-0 through the entire upper bracket. They've played us in the first week of the season, and we just beat the shit out of them. Like it wasn't even close. Like we just smoked them. So we'd play up to competition, we played down to competition. Didn't matter. We 1-1 to everybody. It was just the meme. And Sorry's big thing was just like Jamo said earlier, we'd always lose game one. We're like, all right, boys, here we go. And then like whenever we would lose game one, we were like incredibly optimistic, and like Sorry would always be using that as like a joke to push us into game two. And so like game two was always the most relaxing thing ever because we just knew we were just gonna cream people. That's just the way it was.
Yeah, it's really nice to kind of just find somebody to kind of reset the mood and things like that. We've kind of talked about being down a game, but how does this differ or when you're up a game? Sometimes I feel like emotions just get so high. You guys are like, you got guys screaming, "Yeah, f this team, they suck," and um, sometimes that's good because spirits are high, but other times you got to kind of bring your team down a little bit and make them realize, hey guys, we still have another game to win, or we still have another 2 games to win. What kind of strategies do you guys use in order to refocus after a win? We'll ask Gmo here.
I was really big on keeping the energy up on a win. That was always super infectious for me. Like when you get that real close game like win and everyone's super hyped up, we like festered off that energy. It was really big for us. I can't think of too many situations where um we started disrespecting the other team that we thought they just weren't in the same caliber as us. Maybe in season 32, but that season's kind of an outlier in my mind because we were just truly better than everybody. Um, so I don't have too much to say in regards to this
Yeah, I'll, I'll
this
kind of
situation.
I'll kind of bring it to where Welshie, like, I hope this is okay to say it, but every time I play a game with Welshie, if he just kills you once, not even just as soon as he walks into a lane, you start just disrespecting the other carry. Doesn't matter if you know him, doesn't matter if you don't. Not like all chat and all that stuff, but like kind of hyping yourself up.
I mean, I feel like you have to have that mentality going into any game. I mean, maybe that's wrong. It's not anyone. This is admittedly my mentality. Anyone who's played against me know that I have respect for you as an enemy, like absolutely. But I am actively mentally talking shit about you through the whole of the laning phase. And Greco's heard me do this for the entirety of like every game we've played because
7 seasons.
because I have to talk. I have to actively be saying outside of myself, like, this person is terrible. This person doesn't deserve to be here. I am 100% better than this person. And they are getting they're getting their butt just dragged up and down the lane right now because I am outclassing them at every single moment. And I just feel like
So
that's just the way to be.
I also want to kind of ask you a question. Like we're a little bit captain focused right now, um, but you don't really have that kind of experience yet. You're getting it this season.
Mm.
What personally, as a player, like made you kind of reset off of like a high or low, just
Uh,
as like a player?
I would like to say, though, that I was also like the mental health
You
coach
were, yes. That is really
for a
to
season. Yeah.
elaborate on that. We did have seasons that were down, and we did have certain clashing of teammates at times. Um, and we did designate Welshie as our PMA coach in those games. Actually, why don't you just screw my question? Elaborate on that.
So it was really hard. Like, it's really hard when you have teammates are who, with lack of a better word for it, just have the wrong mental attitude when it comes into certain games and certain aspects of it. When you have teammates that come in who either assume like they're going to lose the series, like, and who are very clearly showing it, like they're not really, they say that they're going to try, and then, oh, they're not thinking that, but you know when something's off. You played enough games with them. Or who just off of a L are just, you can tell, are in the dumps. It's really hard because you can't just bully them back into being right, and you can't just like give them a smack on the nose to tell them like, hey, get your shit together, get back in and get your head back on, because we're going to be playing this. We tried a bunch of different things. One of the things that we did find, like, that really I thought was a really good idea, honestly, was just everybody after a game had to, like, this is when we, and mind you, this is when we had like the really really hard seasons and the really bad mentalities and really bad morale, was everybody has to say one thing they messed up in the game. This gave everybody a chance to say like, hey, here's a really big mistake, like, I think you guys saw this and probably have some like animosity towards me doing this, like, I realize I did this, I'll be better next game. And another thing was to say, give one compliment to one player on the team that happened in that game. Like, and this was loss or win. Say what you did right and say what someone did right and say what you did wrong. No focus. There's no need to focus on like what you did right. Like you can hype yourself up, great, but focus on the team and focus on what went right for somebody else, because everybody else needs to hear sometimes that they did well, because some people are just sitting there after an L thinking, man, I'm garbage. I'm the reason we lost. I'm the reason everything went wrong. And sometimes they need to pick me up, and you can use that to pick them up or just to pat other teammates on the back. And like I said, the admittance of fault is, dude, everybody messes up. Like I guarantee you, no one played perfect Dota. Not one person, even if you play a win, played perfect Dota. Like you died once in the landing phase. You missed last hits. Your last hits were crappy. Your GPM wasn't as great as you wanted to be. Your XPM wasn't great as you wanted to be. You placed a bad ward. You had your courier get killed. Your rotations were bad. Like there's always something to improve on. We're not immortals. We're not pros. There's absolutely something to improve on. I would even say even immortals, dude. You're gonna mess something up once a game, guaranteed. There's always a better decision to be made. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox here a little bit, but yeah, like,
that's why I wanted you to talk about
it. Positive mentality is the number one thing to me in a game. Of just you have to be, and this is a Jamokin thing, but it's a really big thing of positive mental attitude in the way that everything is a positive move towards winning the game. And you have to realize that the moment that you start being, Captain, what is it? What is your Captain Farsight? Captain
Hindsight.
Yeah.
Dwelling on the past on every mistake.
Yeah.
Yep.
The moment that you start being Captain Hindsight and the shoulda, coulda, woulda, then that's a losing mentality for every reason that every captain's ever seen. Yeah, as well. It's
infectious to the rest.
One person points a finger and one person says one thing that he could have done, and then it goes wild. The moment you start that
attitude. Yeah. Positive attitude is something sometimes you almost have to force, because negative attitude is an absolute cancer where it spreads to every single member of the team. And it spreads so fast. I can't even express how hard it is to play when you have somebody just feeling really down and just really just upset with every little small thing that happens within the game. And so you almost have to force, and I really truly believe like having like a PMA guy who just forces the positive attitude like is just super important. But I want to kind of bounce this along. Now, as a captain, part of your job, and sometimes it couldn't be. I know that we talked about this with Brian a little bit, where you kind of throw this to other members. But drafting and scouting throughout the week, or even just your weekly prep, what does that kind of look like for you in like an ideal state, Brian?
So basically, whoever I have drafting, I let them do all the scouting, just because it's their draft plan. Obviously, they're gonna run it by us. They're gonna be like, hey, these are gonna be my first couple bands. This is what I'm gonna first pick, and then in a couple days, they obviously do that a couple days ahead, and then we have time to reflect on it. Like, why not this? Why not this kind of thing? But one of the things I'm seeing one of my teams do right now is they're actually having, and they're all actively doing this, is the person they're laning against, they're scouting them for the team and then putting it in like the draft and strategy channel, and then like they're forming a draft based on what they see. So like let's say the carry player for this team, he's scouting the offlaner for the other team, writing down or typing in like their tendencies in the lane and what heroes they like to pick and why. And that's what they're doing their draft strategy based on. And they're only doing this for scrims right now, obviously, because the season,
Right.
hasn't started yet. But I think that's really interesting approach to it.
That's a good point, because bottom line, you could have one person tell you this is what they like to do, this is what they like to do, but just hearing it and then seeing it is different. And it's really important, I feel like, to know what your opponent is actually doing in the lane and what you're going to see and have an idea ahead of time. One thing that we usually do, like I'm a big guy on spreadsheets. I freaking love spreadsheets, and Welshie can attest to this. I got a spreadsheet for about every single thing that I do in Pot of Suns.
Taught him everything he knows.
Man, I'm gonna get off on a tangent here, but I just got to tell this story because I know that Walshy's gonna appreciate this. When I first started as a captain, like season 28, and I was doing scouting and all that, I would go into an Excel document and I would have like Dota Buff open, and I would type out every single bit of data in this thing. And it would take me hours to do this, and I mean hours. And then I think I was just busy one week, and I asked Welshie, I was like, "Hey, can you like try to put together some of this stuff for me, so that it kind of lightens my load?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And he starts throwing up like screenshots. I'm like, "How the fuck did you do that?" So that was my first introduction to a freaking snipping tool, which I had no idea even existed.
I was the same way. I used to sit in lectures and type up the information while my professor would be speaking.
Oh my god,
And then I was like, oh yeah, I could just
it
take screenshots.
changed my world, man. It just absolutely changed my world. I had no clue. But um Jamokin, like let's hear from you. Like what does your typical week look like as far as like your game prep?
Uh, Usually we try to get all our scouting done on the Monday. Usually as soon as the uh like this week's teams, whoever you're playing, was out. I try and get it out on the Monday. Um, and yeah, we'd have like what they're playing, other drafts they've run, their average game length times, vision reports. Uh, I would usually watch a couple of their replays and see how they lane, their off lane likes to lane. Um, so scouting was a pretty long and tedious task for sure.
Did you guys scrim a lot?
I tried to get about a scrim a week, but in the last couple seasons, we unfortunately our schedules didn't align that great that we didn't get many scrims in.
I feel like that's a big challenge. This last season, Pot agreed. Literally, the only time we played as a five stack was when we walked into the lobby on Thursday, and you could actually see it. Like we had this conversation, Jamokin, a couple days ago. We were talking like, how much do you actually get out of scrims? And me as a drafter, I'm like, well, I personally I get a lot out of it because draft practice to me is really important. Um, but you brought up the idea of it's really good for the drafter, but it's not necessarily mean that it's great for the team because there's a really big aspect of synergy that you don't need to schedule like a game for. Sometimes it's pubs and just five stack pubbing is the best way to kind of learn to play with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like scrims are, they're nice as the drafter. Like they definitely have a tangible benefit, but like if it's the option between like two scrims or four pubs, like I think the synergy is gonna in the long run be a lot more important because it's just about repetition at that point. And like the
Right.
guys just have to play together.
What's your philosophy on that, Brian?
Sorry, I'm in the middle of a phone call. I
Oh,
apologize. A lot of stuff happened.
you're just fine. Um, but yeah, I see teams such as like Acedia and Sloth and I think Vainglory did it a lot. Of just they plan out two, sometimes three scrims a week. Like these guys go freaking hard, man. And it's fun to see how much practice they're getting and how like serious they are at taking this. And you can visibly see it paying off because they're constantly playing as five and they're constantly getting better and they're constantly growing and understanding each other and building that kind of rapport with one another. Um, I would love to do that sometimes, but uh, unfortunately, especially in the last few seasons, it just like you said, it just doesn't align sometimes. Um, Welshie, you guys have been kind of going hard in the last couple days, haven't you?
We really have. And we we ran our first accidental scrim. Which is one of
That's
the
right.
it's one of my favorite things that happens with when you start 5-stacking on the East Coast at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. If you have a 5-stack in a pub, you will more likely than not run into a couple people from 82L who are practicing. So we ended up playing. Let me see the stack's name because I remember. I think I just looked up they just registered. Yeah, Bark Warden. We ended up playing a couple members of Bark Warden with a couple members of just the 82L community that we know, and I was like, oh, I guess we're scrimming because that's I'm counting this like it's a scrim as far as I'm concerned. So try. Now, mind you, I said that just about a hair too late for my mid lane at a random Ogre Magi. So it was a little bit of a rough game, but ultimately though it was a great learning experience because we've already gotten a pretty good feel of what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are, which is
Right.
surprising because it's actually the opposite of I think what our problems were at last season's agreed. But I mean, hey,
Yeah, I mean, a shitty captain will do that. You know what I mean?
oh yeah.
Just-
Yeah.
But
Like we seem to take over. I'll say that we seem to take over laning phases right now. Like I have yet to see us lose a laning phase in most of our lanes except for one. But but now it seems like we have a problem with more so like kind of planning out our later game strategy part and getting a little bit of our team fighting in order. But once we
Right.
get that in order, I think everybody's in trouble. I think everybody can get out the way.
yeah, I'm pumped to see what you guys do. So we talked last week about how PSGS utilized coaching for extended period of time. What kind of benefits do you think you really saw from that, Jamokin?
Um, Actually, to tie back to what we talked about earlier, it was comms for sure. A lot of what I learned from comms, it was what our coach was telling us. Um, and then other than that, we got some really good frameworks for draft ideas and like draft philosophies. So a lot of drafting help and uh, just going through from like laning stage to like mid game to late game and how that should all kind
Transition.
of look together. Yeah, and working through those transition phases was something we looked at quite a bit.
Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of teams that have coaching in what fashion they really utilize it. For us, when we had our coach, we focused mainly on laning stage. We had the philosophy that the only constant in Dota is ever changing as that game is there's always going to be a laning stage. And we put a lot of focus on improving our laning because we felt like, hey, we're a fast paced team. We want to play around our offlaners' timings and we want to basically run at you like a bunch of morons, basically. And we want to run at you for the duration of the game. So we felt like in order to really amplify that, we had to be good in the laning stage. So when we utilize this, we focus mainly on what kind of issues were we having during laning. And our coach would come up and he would be like, this is kind of how like the issues you're having, you're a little passive here or maybe too aggressive and just typical coaching stuff of like lane. But I felt like we saw a massive improvement, especially in the style that we like to run, as soon as we kind of started nailing that down. And we've had times where we've had players utilize coaching individually. Welshie, for one, you had, I think, 2 or 3 different coaches at one time. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was paying for session when we were like lower down. I was paying for sessions for some of our team members.
Right.
Um, the biggest thing that I just on that is one of my big philosophies with Dota, and I think I just picked this up through life, especially when it's something like this, is that the trick to improving isn't always just straight up bashing your head against the stone wall that is ranked games. Sometimes it's about you have to understand what you're doing wrong in order to improve on it. It's not just going to dawn on you. Uh, Practicing the wrong things is only going to reinforce the wrong things, right? That's why coaching is so important.
Right. And it's important to kind of build off of things. You can practice the same thing 100 times, and if it's wrong, it's just going to build a bad habit. And you keep doing it, it's just going to reinforce that bad habit. So it's nice to have somebody, especially outside, because you're never going to see everything on your own, because you have this clear like understanding of the way that you see the game. And if something's wrong, you need somebody outside to kind of look at your game and be like, well, this is what you're doing. And then all of a sudden it clicks. You know what I mean? So it's important to get kind of that outside kind of thought process going. And we talked before, going back to how you're using multiple coaches, you kind of like the idea of seeing different opinions on the same gameplay and developing your own style off of that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, different coaches are going to give you different inputs, right? And it's about understanding that certain coaches are going to be able to give you better advice than others. I know some coaches who are just they're hard rank grinders, I would say is the best way to put it. So they know how to win a game, but then they know how to win a pub. But they can definitely, I can tell you right now, anybody who's who's like a pub stomper, like really hard, is somebody who's incredibly good at their laning phase. And they're going to be able to critique the living crap out of you about your laning phase and tell you everything that's wrong with it. But they're not going to know the most about team play and about what you need to be doing in a drafting situation and things like that. Someone who's a support or someone who's a professional experience is going to be able to tell you all of that stuff, which is why I think it's important you can take the same replay it to 3 different coaches, and they'll tell you different things. Like, there's going to be some overlap, obviously, but that being said.
Right. So let's talk about kind of filling rosters, and not as a captain's standpoint. Um, well, I guess maybe a captain's, but talking about like org owners. Um, Jamokin, you ran PSGS as we talked about, and you had, we'll just call them the boys because I still have no idea the correct way of saying that word.
Yeah, the
But
Biscuit Boys or
yeah,
whatever.
the Biscuit Boys. So you ran the boys. Obviously, we have this, I think, eight teams now this season, and it's always been kind of a question of who should actually be in charge of the rosters of the teams. Should it be the org owners? Should it be the captains? Is there a mix in between? I know other organizations such as WSS would assign captains, and based on whatever qualifications they use. I know um, some other orgs would oversee really hard and almost breathe on the backs of their captains, for better or worse. I really, who knows whether it's better or not. Um, but who should really be the ones to run it? Should it be the org owners? Should it be the captains? Um, BryGuy, how do you guys? What's your philosophy there at Corinne?
So my thing, and it actually has come to bite me on the butt. I'll elaborate on that in a second. But my big thing is I let the captains run the teams. If I think they're doing something slightly wrong or they're not being like involved enough, I'll shoot them a message to kind of steer them the right direction, and it'll work itself out. So like I'll have captains message me and they're like, "Hey, it's not working with this teammate. What's your policy on dropping adding players?" And I'm like, "It's your team." Like I let my captains absolutely run the team. So if you want to get rid of a player, if you need help with it, let me know. But then I always talk to the player about it. But as you guys have seen last season, sometimes that doesn't work too well because I'll anoint somebody captain that isn't like captain material, and I learned this the hard way with Rhino last season. I'm sure you all know all about that. But
Oh yes.
that turned into like I'm sticking to my philosophy kind of thing. Like it's your team, run the team. Whatever you need to do, we'll figure it out. But it didn't end up too good. But I'm still sticking with philosophy. I let my captains run the teams. If they need help, just ask me, and I'll kind of steer them in the right direction.
It turned into league rules. What it did.
Yeah, it did. That was so rough.
Oh, goodness gracious.
I
We're not
felt
going to
so bad.
elaborate too much in it. Basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but he just shuffled through players like candy, right?
Yeah, he did. Well, in fairness, some of them weren't his fault.
Sure.
A lot of team clashing and like people they're not Rhino's not kicking them. They're like, I'm straight up leaving, and then Rhino's like, what do I do? I'm like, we'll find somebody else.
Yeah.
And then that's
Yeah.
just that's how we did it all season. People just didn't want to be around.
Yeah, it's some things are just unavoidable, and
Right.
I don't want to say it's Rhino's fault. I'm not here to pick at Rhino at all. I think
Right.
he's very, like, for better or worse, very big, like, personality and
He is
Dota
Very
that almost
passionate.
everyone looks forward to
extremely
hearing
passionate.
from quite
Yeah, that's the
often.
best way to describe him. Is just
Um,
very passionate.
Yes.
But yeah, sometimes it's just things out of your control, and you got to shuffle through players. We talked a little bit, kind of where not everyone's always going to see eye to eye on each roster. So sometimes unfortunate things happen where you got to kind of shuffle through and find replacements and all that. So we're at Pot of Sins, we're very much in the same philosophy as yours. We're more interested in creating the community aspect. We want our captains to run the team. I direct them through uh, preseason administrative stuff, I guess, making sure every single team is ready to go on the right rosters, have their rosters kind of just get on their ass and make sure everything's set up. And first week, you're ready to go. But me and Welshie, when we started Potisons, we talked about it. What kind of format do we really want to set? And we went along the idea of, look, we're not playing with you on Thursday, and we're not going to be on your team. It's not my job to tell you how to run your team. If someone's just being a dick, as like a captain, then yeah, we're going to say something. If I've got players constantly coming to me and being like, "Hey, my captain's an asshole," then yeah, we're gonna probably message them, talk to them, come up with different solutions on how to change that. And if it gets out of hand, then yeah, we'll probably drop you. We haven't had to do that yet, which is phenomenal. Thank the Lord, because that's not
Lucky.
conversations that you like to have.
Yeah.
One of the
But
sorry, go ahead, man.
oh, go ahead, go.
One of the biggest things that I think that at least I was big on about telling each one of the captains whenever they joined Pada Sins was just the reminder of like, hey, you are like the head of this team, which means that like, their victories are your victories and their losses are your losses. And to that point as well, like you are held to the highest standard of anyone on this team. So if one of your teammates like speaks out of line or does something that's like against us as an org in our ideals, obviously we expect you to dole out like a punishment or we will get involved, like to do so. But you are held to a much higher standard. Like inappropriate behavior from you, but either to your teammates or to enemy teams is much worse seen. And you need to understand that you are a representative of this organization more than anyone else on your team. And that the responsibility of making sure your team is in order is on your shoulders.
Right. And I had an instance of that, which this Grin Fury stack that Rhino ran last season, that kind of imploded the team. That's why I ended up playing on the team at the end of the season, which I was like, I'm not playing on any teams. I ended up playing on it. But so I don't know, 2 weeks into the season, I get a message from Rhino saying, "Hey man, one of our players is in another Discord just trashing another one of our players. What do we do?" My instant response was, "We're a community, he's gone." Like that's it. That's all. That was my only response. I was at work, and like that's what it was. And then Rhino comes back. He goes, we're gonna try to keep him. We're gonna try to work it out. I'm gonna have him talk it out." I'm like, "All right, man, it's your team. Let's run it."
Yep.
And then that same thing came back 1 week before playoffs, or maybe 1 week into play. I don't remember, but that whole thing reared its ugly head again in comms, and then the team just exploded. Like one of my players left my Discord, I'm telling you, like a staple community member left the community because this had gone on for like too long. It was a disaster, man. And then it went to the 82L Discord, and then it was a disaster. I don't know if you guys
That's
remember any
one
of that.
thing that we
Drama
are
in the
very,
82L Discord? No.
very yeah. That's one thing we're very, very big on is you do not start drama in the
Oh yeah.
NHL Discord. Everything that, and I tell my captains every single season, everything that you do and you say directly reflects to Pot of Sense. I don't mind fighting issues and standing up for teams and things like that. But I'm not going to be like, you're not going to be in our org and at the same time bashing the league for no good reason other than you're just being an asshole.
Or straight bashing other teams or things of that nature.
Right.
Which let me
Yeah.
tell you, is really hard because we have managed to control some of the biggest shit talkers in all of the 82L league, which exist on our teams. Some of which are captains.
Right.
Me too, buddy.
One of which
Except
is
I
you,
let
Captain.
one of them. I let one of them shine. I let Rhino shine because
Oh,
he's
you
Rhino.
you
I,
gotta let
I,
Rhino shine.
so I at one point maybe like a year ago, I told him like, man, you got to cut this out, or you're gonna be gone. He's been one of my best Dota friends for a long time, and that's why he was integrating with me. And then he like did it again. I'm like, I told you I was gonna have to. And then like a week later, I'm like, man, here's the deal. Then we really hashed it out. I'm like, I'm not gonna let you. I'm not gonna make like this change who you are. So you need to decide what you want to do here. And so then we hashed it out. And then, believe it or not, he's a lot more calm in the 82L Discord than he used to be. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I definitely have. So it's kind of worked out. But he's still that huge personality in there, which I'm allowing him to be. Which sounds weird. I'm not allowing him to be. I'm just letting him, do his thing.
So let's talk about this dropping players. Is it the org owner's responsibility? Is it the captain's responsibility? What do you think?
So I let my captains handle it. But if they if they're gonna do it in like a comm or in a message, I always have them uh put me into it. Like if they're doing like a message, like a DM, have put me in the DM, friend me, add me in there. I want to be a part of it. And so my big thing is if you played on a Grin team and it's like postseason and they're dropping you for a different player, you're invited to be on another Grin team, no hesitation. Like you're part of this, you can join a different team. Like I don't care if like people say you were bad or whatever. I don't care about that. Like you're part of this, you're in on another team. So that's always like my thing. I'm like, hey man, sorry this is happening. Are you interested in blah team? Are you interested in playing with these guys, learning from these guys? And that's kind of like my biggest thing.
Right. Jamokin, what do you feel about that?
So the way uh the boys, Biscuit Boys, Bagel Boys, whatever they're actually called, uh, the way I always dealt with that is just we were a more experienced team, and we just kind of helped guide them and like in a way coach them, give them someone good to scrim against once in a while, be there for advice if they ever needed it. Like, hey, we ran into this. What do you think we should do? And so, never had a role in like whether or not they should drop players, pick up players. That was all on them.
Yeah,
And
we're
then
kind
for ourselves, uh, dropping players has always been, one of those really uh, difficult decisions as a captain.
of right.
Especially when you go late into the season, I think is a really interesting aspect because a lot of teams start solidifying their rosters with like a week or 2 weeks left in playoffs, and you're like, if you know you're not running it back with the player, you're really in this tough spot. It's like, well, do I not tell them? Maybe we go to finals and then they struggle to find a team because a lot of teams have solidified their rosters and the next season will start in 2 weeks. Or do I let them know, hope that it's amicable and that everything's going to be all right and give them time to find a new team?
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in because you don't really know how the player's going to respond. Like you want them to keep playing for the season that you're in, especially if you're going to the finals. But at the same time, like yeah, you want to give them the ability to find a team. But if you get dropped, let's say in a situation where like you're under the impression, hey, we're running it back the next season, and then all of a sudden you find out you get dropped, are you going to be able to keep your mentality in the sense of being able to play the next week or 2 weeks or whatever it is for a team that I don't want to say I guess stab in the back is too strong, but made you feel something and then gave you like a whole new picture.
Yeah, I really think this is like on the captain to gauge. Like for me, it was never about how good you were at Dota. I was more gauging you as a person, right? Like I would take the person who I thought was a better fit for my team that might be less skilled than someone who's more skilled that I think might not work with my team as well.
Right.
Even if that skill gap was quite big. Obviously there's a limit. Um but I like to think that, I knew these people when I picked them up for my teams and I know how they'll handle situations. So they're like a big enough person to handle understanding that, hey, they're not going to run it back with me. That's fine. I'm going to give you everything I got. Well, I'm still here.
Right. Well, I haven't heard you in a while, so I want to kind of hear your take on this.
My mentality personally is I don't care about next season or sorting out next season thinking. Right now, I'm thinking about this season until it's done. So personally, as far as I'm concerned, like not that I guess that I would be looking for newer players if it was really something that I needed to start thinking about, but ultimately I would say that I don't want to interfere with anybody's thinking about this season. I wouldn't want this done to me, like in full honesty. Like I do respect the mentality of um what is it? The mentality of like I want to give you a chance to have a team next season. But personally, just on my personal level, if someone told me, "Hey, just so you know, we're not at grand finals yet. We're like near grand finals. We're probably not going to run it back with you next season." Um, it would automatically taint me personally and my mentality. I'd be like, "Oh, great! I get to go play with the people that have kicked me off their team. Fantastic." There's a reason that Awe 2000 got kicked off of VG or whatever team he got kicked off of after they won TI, not before. And that's
Right.
my mentality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen
No.
captains try to like form next season teams mid-season, and that I I don't know. So there was one that actually got leaked to the players that they weren't going to play on the next season before they knew, and it was like this super convoluted, like, yeah, so that's the kind of the way things work, but we can't be doing that because now this guy's not going to play like his hardest with you because he just knows he's not going to be here next season. Same with this guy, and it just makes this massive mess. So every time I see a captain trying to do that, I'm like, hey, here's the deal: you're playing this right now, you have to play this out. Once you're committed to the season, you're committed all the way through the season.
Yeah, I think I follow along with that. I think there's situations where, like, this player is not going to play the next season. Like, they've openly said, "Hey, like, I'm not playing." Like, for me, for Pot of Greed, I said, I think midway through or even at the start of the season, this is my final season. And while she knew going in that he was going to be the captain there on out. So if there's a situation like that, or one of my players comes up to me and like, "Hey, I'm just not playing next season," or they know like, "Hey, I'm too far in rank to stay where we're at. I'm going to find another team." Then I think you look for somebody else. But if you're making a run at the finals, I feel like kicking somebody is a really difficult spot because for what we said before, how do you mentally go in like to the next week and the team doesn't want you there, but now you got to play 2 more weeks.
It's a double-edged sword though, because knowing that everybody knows that you're replacing this player allows you to start looking for players for next season while there's still good free agents left in the pool.
Well, should
Like it
everybody know?
benefits the team. I mean, people will see your free agents post, and as long as you let that player know beforehand, I'm on the fence that it benefits you that you have a place to play next season. You'll find a better place to play next season, and I can find a solid replacement.
Yeah,
Especially if like like your team's moving up and this player didn't improve, didn't rank up. Like I think you have to start seeing the writing on the wall that, hey, I'm gonna start playing in a division that's like two levels up on where I am.
Yeah, it's a weird spot to be in for sure. Um, but let's kind of talk like Walshy, you are a new captain this season.
Mm.
And so I kind of want to get your take on going from the player role to the captain's role. How is the adjustment? What are you seeing? Is there anything that like kind of surprised you that you didn't
The
really expect?
Yeah, I mean the responsibility of it was amazingly hard to find good players, and well, not it was really hard to find people, and then it was really easy suddenly. And deciding on who I think is going to work best is such a stressful thing because I'm like, look, I need to figure out which one of you guys is going to be the best teammate, and I can't get everybody together for scrims all the time or for tryouts all the time. So I need to figure out who I like out of you just off of my look at your Dota buff and everything like that. And but I've loved the creativity that I've been allowed to have because I had options for really weird lineups, I guess I would put it. Not weird, but like not what I think people would call traditional. So we lost our mid laner and we lost our four, and I was left with the decision of, do I take a really, really good four and put a decent person mid? Or do I take a really, really good person mid and take a decent four? And I feel like most people thinking about it go, okay, well, I'll just take the really, really good mid laner. That way I know I win mid. And that's a huge lane to win. But I love the thought of like, but what if I have a really good 4 and 5 who just coordinate the crap out of these games because they know how to win games? Like that sounds pretty good to me. Like in full honesty to me, like immortal mid laners are just really, really good mid laners. Like they're not necessarily the best at coordination. Really, really good 4 and 5s are ones who know how to coordinate and support their winning lineups. Like they are the well coordinated ones. So what's the way I go about this? Now the 4 ended up falling through, unfortunately, because I wanted to give it a try, but I didn't get to. So I went with the really, really high tier mid laner, which was, I think, again, the classic choice. Um, but the responsibility is just the biggest shocker, I guess. Like I'm constantly now thinking about the team. I constantly get questions from people about what's going on with us and what my plan is. And it's been a blast, I think, and at the same time a lot of responsibility. Like before I got to just basically go, know my game, know my lane, know how to win. And now I have to know how to win the game, not just my lane.
Right. So as you move in, to kind of the captain role, and once you start getting into the season, there's going to be different scenarios that happen, and there's different things that occur every single season in every single different stack, and things along those lines. Um, Though I want to talk a little bit about like just managing emotions within the game. We touched briefly on it when we talked about the PMA coach essentially that we designated you. But Brian, how do you manage emotions within games? Whether it's just being too hyped up and screaming things that don't even matter, or just getting really, really down on yourself, just mid game. How do you manage that?
Just by making the next call, just pushing the game along. So like we talked about earlier how people are like big captain hindsight. Whenever people get like that, I just take the full blow. I'm like, yeah, my bad. What's the next move? This is what we're doing next. I just try to push the pace on the game and on the comms. That way people don't have time to be crazy excited about the sweet player, crazy down on the move we just made and how bad it was. I don't give the team enough time to do that, and just by making call after call.
How about you, Jim? Over
Actually,
there?
I have a question for you, BryGuy. So, what do you
Yeah.
do when like conflict arises? Like something happened in a game, and players are just not letting it go, and like it carries on through the week. You guys get together to like pub or something, and you can just really sense like the conflict, and there's definitely some like underlying issues there. How do you go about that?
So I can't think of a time where I've crossed that, cause so I don't know. I can't think of actually a time where I've gone through someone like feeling down throughout the week based on how they played throughout the week, or like a conflict between two individuals going throughout the week. I, but what I would do, like just like how I call it in the games, I would just continue to like change the subject, kind of like what did you think this person did well? If it's a conflict between two people, what do you think he did good? Kind of how she was talking early on being the PMA coach. That's kind of how I do it. I don't hop into their conversation and be like, yeah, this was terrible. I just change it or make them kind of make up.
Yeah, I'll kind of add to that question too, because we had a situation a couple seasons ago where even between myself and another player, um, we had a very big disagreement like mid-season. I forget exactly what it was. It was probably around drafting because I think that's simply what it is. Um, but we had a big disagreement and we felt it. I think honestly for a couple weeks. And personally, I think my job as a captain, that's really bad when I'm in the middle of it. And eventually we found common ground. And I think that's really important to find that common ground and be able to move past it. Because if you're going to let something at the end of the day, very, very small and something that isn't going to affect or that shouldn't affect your play that actually is, then all of a sudden it becomes a major issue and something that's going to affect actual gameplay. And as a captain, you can't allow that to happen. So I think it's really important to find that common ground and move past it as quickly as possible. Um, how about when you're finding players or you're finding like a roster, trying to fill a roster? What do you guys actually look for in those? I think we can kind of turn this one to Welshie since he's like first time going through this. What were you looking for when you were trying to find specific teammates?
I mean, it just kind of started with me looking at their pubs and just kind of looking at, first off, do you play what I need you to play? So obviously there's like rank, but everybody knows what they're looking for when it comes to that. But it would first be like, do you play the heroes that I need you to play? So like, I really want someone who plays fast mid laners. Like if you're a mid laner who plays like, Meepo's really greedy and it's a solo win hero and things like that, or lone druid or tiny or something like that. I really don't want that. I want someone who knows how to play a diverse set of mid laners, but I specifically am looking for someone who has fast mid laners. So Pugna, Leshrac, Spirits. If you can't play Spirit in the mid lane, I don't want you. On top of that as well, just I have to be able to gauge. I'll even go look at your pubs and I'll look at your losses and I'll look at your wins. And I'm going to see like at least two of each, and specifically the hard losses I want to try and find. Was there ever a game that I can find in the last 25 where you fed down mid? Or you just gave up and decided to just be terrible? Some of them I'll give the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, you were down, you were doing fine and your safe laner is 0-12 because he's literally just eating it. And you're kind of playing stupid because of it. Okay, that's excusable. But can I find a game where you fed down mid? And I found that in one of the mid laners, and I said, well, I found one game where you fed down mid. I'm not dealing with you. I'm not taking the risk of you doing this because I don't care what your reasoning is in ranked. Like you were 25 minutes into the game. I don't care if your team was talking total crap about you. There's never a reason to do that. And I'm not bringing that into the team. So I'm looking for positive mental attitude and diversity. Sorry to kind of summarize that.
How about you, Brian?
So when I'm like trying out team members, and which I'm actually doing right now for Grin's MD2L team, I'm looking for a 4. So my biggest thing is I want you to be a part of the team in a huge loss, and I want to see how you handled that before I confirm you in there. So my biggest thing is I've seen teams explode after losing a game they definitely should have won based on like ranks or whatever, or like I don't know, just any embarrassing loss. I've seen teams just explode because they don't know how to deal with it and they just get at each other's throats and they can't talk it out. And that's not Grin teams. I've seen other teams do that. So my biggest thing is I want you to be in an environment, in a controlled environment where you lose a game that you shouldn't lose and it feels terrible, and how you move on from that. I don't care about wins. Wins are like whatever.
Right.
I want to see you lose.
Bottom line, you need cohesion.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. JMO?
Yeah, I definitely think making sure that the player is like almost mentally sound to a certain degree is really important, because once you get into the lobby, like, tilt just can't happen, you know? It's extremely important that tilt never happens with you when you're with a team. Like, people who played with me in league games can probably attest to this, but like, compared to me in a pub and me in a league game, drastically different. Drastic. I'll flame my pub mates. My support doesn't have salves, or he ain't pulling or sapping XP. Like, I'm gonna let you know, and I ain't gonna be the nicest guy about it either. But
Weird.
right? But like, when I'm with my team, it would never happen ever, you know. And so definitely making sure that they understand that when you're with us, when we're doing our shit, that can't happen. As long as I can like trust that you're not gonna be a shitty teammate, like, that's all the buy-in and like uh sanity check I kind of need to that degree.
Right. When I was captaining Greed, I kind of had two main things that I looked for. The first one was I tried to grab guys that we know already because I know that we're gonna get along and have fun playing together. That was the biggest thing for me, is I wanted to make sure that regardless, we always had fun playing together, even through the week. And the second thing was to me, there's steals like of players. Like I remember like when we had Rob Boss, he was, I think, Legend 4, but he played at a skill level significantly higher. And there's certain players that when you're looking at qualities, they may be stuck at a rank, but when they get on a team, how much higher above their rank are they actually going to be playing? And those are the ones, in my opinion, you have to have guys like that if you're going to win a league. You have to have the guys that are sitting there stuck at Legend 2 for whatever reason, whether they just don't play a lot, like a ton of games, like in rank, or they play like basically just play a ton of unranked games. Um, or for whatever reason, they just keep getting the shit end of the stick in their rank games. But when you put them in a team aspect, you're like, this Legend 2 is playing at a Legend 5 or an Ancient 1 skill level. When you have guys like that, then that's what's going to win you games. But I think now is a kind of a good time to end this here, sake of time. So first off, I wanted to say thank you, Brian, so much for hopping on here and kind of talking to us. I think I speak for the rest of the guys. It was an absolute blast talking to you for the last
Thanks for
hour or so.
having me. I apologize for dipping in and out. Long story.
Hey, it happens. It happens. But we are very excited that you're able to hop in, and hopefully those who are going to watch this and take a look enjoy it as well. I think we kind of touched some really neat topics of the inner workings of a captain and our opinions on it. And um, like I said, it was a lot of fun. So thank you everyone who watched this. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.